Hi, my name is Laine Kelley-Cain, and I'm doing a presentation for Gary Phillips, IDS 297. The culture I'm going to talk to you guys about is Japanese culture. First, I'm going to start out with cultural background information. Japanese culture can date back to 10,000 BC when the first Japanese group settled in Japan. Many roots in Japanese culture are based off of Chinese cultures, but with Japan being so far away, they had to come up and create their own cultural differences. What's ironic about this is that most used in Chinese culture today are actually inspired by Japanese culture. Many times in Japanese culture, family wealth was determined by your culture, or culture was determined by family wealth. Japanese determine many things based on their culture, like occupations, fashion, architecture, and music. Some occupations based on culture are geishas, samurai warriors, or even just businessmen. Today, the main occupation of a man would vary depending on the wealth and the connection this person may have. Women back in the day would try to marry a man to take care of them that usually would have money. For some reason, if they did not, a career as a geisha was always an option. Geishas are female entertainers who perform, sing, dance, and wait on men, usually wealthy men because they were the ones who could pay the money to have a geisha. Today this occupation isn't as popular, but you can generally find these entertainers or artists in Kyoto, Japan. Fashion was determined by the culture, consists of fudoshi, furusodi, hakama, hatten, happy, or kimono. But as of today, more Western style clothing is involved, but some cultural traditions are still around. Although these are different kinds of fashion in Japanese culture, one of the most popular is the kimono. Depending on your relationship status, wealth, or even age determines what type of kimono you would wear. There are many different types of kimonos. Some are for a wedding. Yukata is a casual kimono. Fusodi is a formal kimono for single women. Tomsodi is for special occasions and functions. And a humanji is for married women going to a formal event. But generally, only the most beautiful and formal kimonos are worn by single young women. Here is an example of some of the things you might see in the fashion. This is an example of a formal kimono, and this is the occupation of a geisha. This, as you can tell, the geishas are also wearing kimonos, and they're also wearing Japanese traditional clothing. Another lifestyle determination I'm going to talk about is architecture. Usually, Japanese architecture exhibits very similar designs. They start with a thick wall of wooden columns, and they're used to stabilize and support the structure. And at the end of these columns, they would usually place a single large stone, which would be used to anchor the building into the ground. Everything, including the floors, walls, and complex backered roof, were built around these columns. There are many different styles and appearances of roofs. Most builders stuck to the basic concept of a tiled sloping roof. The roofs of older temples are usually curved up at the corners, whereas the more traditional styles now are the flatter, smoother roofs. So the next determination I'm going to talk to you about is the types of music. One of the most popular instruments is the koto. Brought to Japan in the 7th century, this instrument was used as entertainment for wealthy and upper-class citizens. The koto has 13 strings stretched along a soundboard, which is usually about 2 meters long. Generally, they're made out of hollowed-out wood and timber, and the strings were traditionally made of silk, but today they're usually made out of synthetic materials. The music ranges from the easiness of traditional pieces to the difficult contemporary pieces. So in this picture, this one is of music. This is the instrument, the koto instrument. And as you can tell in this building, it is an older style building because the main giveaway is that the corners are upturned, Whereas, like I said, in the more up-to-date, they use the flat edges on their buildings. So now I'm going to talk to you about elements of Japanese culture. The first element I'm going to discuss is clothing. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the clothing. There are 4 main types of clothing in Japanese culture. You have your casual wear, you have your everyday clothes, you have special occasions for festivals, and then you have your costumes that were worn for theater. Women typically dress much more formal than men, but you don't usually see people in Japan dressed down. That's not really how they choose to present themselves. Like, you will not see, usually you won't see them walking around in sweatpants or something. You know, usually it's at least jeans. That's their casual wear. In this picture, as you can tell, the women attire is much more complex than the men. This is another type of kimono, but like I said, the men's has very few parts, whereas the woman has a lot more. So the next one is appreciation. Many Japanese culture use seasons as a way to judge which color kimono they would wear. So like in the springs, they would wear the brighter colors, and in the fall, they would wear the darker colors. And in some other cultures, they would also use it to symbolize the youth or the age of the female or male. So the youth would wear brighter colors, or the older would wear darker colors. So in this picture, as you can tell, the younger girl has a lighter kimono, which is brighter, and the older girl has a darker kimono. So the next element I'm going to talk to you about is adaptation. So for us to appreciate this cultural tradition of fashion, we might look into purchasing similar clothing. Like, we wear jeans and sweatpants. So we might, instead of buying sweatpants, wear jeans on a regular basis, as they would. So we wouldn't dress down, and you wouldn't want to go over there and looking like a slob, you know. So in this example, this is an example of casual attire. This woman is wearing jeans, high heels, and a blazer jacket. So that's typically their dress down style. The next element I'm going to talk to you about is haptics. Awareness in Japanese culture, handshakes are very, very uncommon. Most of the time they used bowing as a way to greet each other, or even as a way to apologize or say goodbye. So depending on your social status, the higher you are on the social ladder, the longer the bow you would expect. So for more of a casual greeting, you would just nod your head. Whereas for more of a formal meeting, you would use your whole upper body. So as you can see in this picture, the women are leaving one another, so they are using a bow as a way to say goodbye. Here's appreciation. Japanese culture, bow as a way to greet and respect each other. It's not just saying hello, it's also out of respect. Rather than apologizing like we would in America, they would use a bow to demonstrate how sorry you are. By knowing these greetings and apologies, we can avoid rude acquaintances and accept what other cultures have to offer. So in this picture, I used to demonstrate this is what we would do in America when we were greeting one another. We would shake hands, whereas in Japanese culture, you would bow to each other. Adaptation. There are many different ways to bow. One tradition is if you are standing on a tantium floor, you would get on your knees when bowing. Then, the longer the bow, the more respect is shown. For casual and informal affairs, you give a slight head nod. For mild apologies, you would bow with the head. For a regular apology, you would bow with the upper body for 5 seconds. For a serious apology, you would bow with the upper body for 15 to 20 seconds. Here is a picture of President Obama bowing to the Emperor Akihito. Sorry for pronunciation. But in this picture, one thing a lot of people said was his bow was too low. You know, they said that it's not a form of disrespect, but it's definitely not what their culture would suggest. So one experimental element that I wanted to focus on between American culture and Japanese culture is karaoke. Karaoke was created over 20 years ago in a small Japanese town called Kobe. This idea came when a guitarist was unable to show up and the club owner had to think on his feet. So he started playing some music to make up for his absence. The club owner then encouraged the club guests to start singing to break the silence, and it kind of started karaoke. So this is a very enjoyable and popular pastime for Japanese businessmen. Many will work really long weeks and they just want to go to the bar, have a drink, relax, and so a lot of the times they sing karaoke. Usually this hobby is about $12 an hour, but it also includes free drinks and food for that whole hour. So some karaoke clubs even offer private rooms, which for people who don't want to sing in front of the whole club, so they can sing with their friends in a private room. And what makes karaoke so much more intense over there is some people even hire karaoke coaches to teach them to sing karaoke better. So there are many ways to improve your karaoke skills. Most songs in Japanese are popular. Some popular songs are Japanese songs, but one popular song that they sing over in Japan is the Beatles, or a group that they sing is the Beatles. So, like, if an American was in the bar with the Japanese culture, with Japanese people, they might sing a Beatles song for that person. So, another thing that's interesting about karaoke is it's gotten so serious over in Japan, sometimes they even use the machines to tell you how many calories you have burned while singing that song. So here's a picture of the karaoke. This is an example, this picture above is an example of a private room you might see in a club used just for karaoke. And this is an example of a businessman singing karaoke and having a good time with his friends. So the way this kind of relates to Americans, the American culture, is like we would have Rock Band, which is a game for the Wii where you play as a band and you can also sing, which is, it pulls the words up on the screen just like karaoke, and you can sing as the music plays. So that kind of relates to the karaoke that they would sing. So does anybody, that's the end of my Japanese culture. Does anybody have any questions?
Have you ever sang karaoke?
I have not sang karaoke before, so I'm not a big karaoke person.
Would you?
Would I sing karaoke? I probably would not. It would have to be something pretty serious for me to sing karaoke and get up in front of everybody to do that. So. Okay, if that's all the questions, I'm going to move on to my subculture. The subculture I chose to do is Subban subculture, which is a Japanese subculture. First I'm going to start off with some information, some background information, and some facts on this culture. Of course, there are many different subcultures in Japanese, but the one I'm going to tell you about is Subban. The Japanese subculture of Subban is oddly strange and violent. The word Subban can be broken into two parts. Suk meaning female, ban meaning boss. So these, it was young women who were out to make a name for themselves, who were very violent and did very acts. It was made up of young girls who are known for their violent acts and stealing. So there are many groups within the Subban subculture, but the main and largest being Kanto Women Delinquent Alliance, and this consists of over 20,000 members. So this group, the groups within this subculture would sometimes meet with each other, and it would cause a lot of conflict and a rise in a lot of violence. So some of the places where you might see Subban subculture is, it started to show up around the 80s and was inspired by another gang called Bancho, which Bancho was a boy gang. It was typically a boys gang. So each group of Subban subculture members had very strict rules, and if these rules are broken, there's often serious consequences. One example I read was a slap on the wrist to us would be like them burning you. Like they would burn your skin in some area. Usually it was the face or the arms. Subban became popular in literature and movie films as characters. So For the most part, there's not very much information about the Souk band subculture because they try to keep it that way. They don't want information known about them. They want to be kind of mysterious, and they want to just have a name that they're bad and serious. So the element I'm going to talk about is clothing of the Souk band culture. So most of this subculture is identified by their clothing style, or their clothing style or actions. So they typically would wear a sailor's uniform. And another way you might identify them is by their brightly colored hair. A lot of the times they would dye it like a cartoonish color, or they would perm it, or they would wear brightly colored socks. So this is an example of a sailor uniform that could be worn by Souk band members. In appreciation, in America there are many gangs, but typically the gangs don't have a set uniform that they would wear around town. Souk band culture chooses to wear the sailor outfits as a way to blend in with the crowd. They might give a few subtle hints, as like I said, with their hair or their socks or something, or by their actions, but for the most part they want to avoid being detected. So they wear these uniforms because in Japanese culture, a lot of the girls are required, or the private schools require students to wear sailor uniforms. So since this is a common clothing style, they choose to wear this style to blend in. Here's a group of girls wearing the sailor uniform. This is a typical outfit required at many schools.